All over the country, employers are trying to figure out the answer to this question. What can I do to recruit and retain quality employees in my business? We all know that a successful business comes down to a successful team. But if your employees maybe have one foot out the door because they think that they're supposed to have 30 different jobs in their lifetime, and the other half of your employees have been there a long time and they're just counting the days to retirement, it's tough. It's tough to build a team and a culture where we can be successful. Over 20 years ago, I did the most courageous thing of my life. I walked out the door and left a very stable but very boring job as an engineer. I walked out the door and I quit, and then I realized, wait, I'm a female engineer with 5 years of experience and a handful of contacts. What was I thinking? This is what I was thinking. I hated the culture where I worked. It was so negative. It was so non-collaborative. I couldn't stand it, and I told my husband, life is too short to live like this. I can't do it anymore. So I went off and I started my own business. It was hard. It's hard to build successful teams that want to stay with you for the long run. But I did it. And I did it because I learned this one thing. My first job as an engineer was to design campgrounds. It was a fantastic job and a unique opportunity because I got to go up into the forest where there was no current campground. So it was this big piece of land. And what we did was we would create a vision for what we wanted this campground to be. Did we want to have single...
Just ask the question, did we want?
Did we want to have places for tents to camp? Did we want to have long places where families could bring their RVs in? Did we want to have a big group site for family reunions? Do we want equestrian trails, hiking trails? We had to answer all these questions and figure out these vision. Maybe it was a combination of these things. So we created a vision, and then the next thing that we did is I went out onto the land and I helped to perform the survey. It was so important that we knew what was already there. We had to know the topography. We had to know any place that there might be any water. We knew where every single tree was, what kind of tree it was, and how big that tree was. Then we took all that information and we came back to our design team. Design is collaborative. We got our team together. We even talked to some people that would be using that campground in the future to find out what did they want? What did they want this to be like? The result of that is we created campgrounds that are so popular today, sometimes you have to have reservations 1 year in advance to be able to camp in that campground. But most importantly, this is what I learned. I learned design principles, and I thought, I'm going to take those design principles and use them in designing a culture. The culture in my company is not going to be by default. It's not going to just happen. The culture in my company is going to be designed by those very same principles of having a vision, doing a survey to know what's there and know what we need to get rid of, and by design, collaboration. So when we talk about creating cultures by design, first we have to say, what is a culture? Culture is actually defined as behavioral norms. In my words, I think it's 3 things. I think it's the attitude, the language, and the behaviors that we have. So who determines those in a company? Who determines what that is in your culture? As leaders, we have a responsibility to lead that culture and to lead it by design. Think of the 3 design principles that I shared with you. Is the culture that you are currently operating in right now, is it a culture that's a result of a thought-out vision? As leaders, when is the last time you truly surveyed your employees? We can do surveys online, we can do surveys on paper, we can actually talk to people face to face and find out what they're thinking. Are we surveying our people to find out what's there? What needs to be removed? Even if, but it's the way we've always done it here. And the third thing is design. Is your culture a result of collaboration? As leaders, it is our responsibility to create a culture where people will want to come and where they'll want to stay. Now, I think the beautiful forest lands that I used to work on are one of the greatest resources in the world. But I am passionate about another great resource. That is the untapped potential that's inside each of our employees. It's untapped because we're not being intentional about the cultures that we're bringing them to work in. If you want to have a place that is so in demand like my campgrounds are today, can you imagine having a culture and a workplace that's so in demand that people can't wait to come there? That's the kind of culture that you can design. If you create a culture by design, not default, by utilizing a vision, surveys, and collaborative design, you will create the place where people want to come and where they want to stay. Okay. I had the great opportunity to grow up on a farm in Montana. Every year we like to go back and take our kids to visit the farm and visit Grandma and Grandpa. One year we were up there and my son was about 5 years old. So we were driving down the road in the van and all of a sudden he looks up and he says, "Hey, how come Dad is usually the driver of the van, but whenever we're in Montana, Mom is the driver of the van?" So one day he looked up and he said, "Hey, how come Dad is usually the driver of the van, but then when we're in Montana, Mom is the driver of the van?" So as we're driving down the road, my husband explains, "Well, because Mom grew up on the farm with Grandma and Grandpa, she knows all these country roads, it just makes more sense that she should drive." And he said, "Wait a minute, so Grandma and Grandpa are her mom and dad?" Don't you love it when it finally clicks? And my husband says, "Yeah, that's right, that's her mom and dad." He's quiet for another minute and then he said, "Man, that's not fair. She got way better parents than we did." Unfortunately for my children, it's true. I got way better parents than they did. Gallup says that 2 out of every 3 employees is actively disengaged. We don't get to choose who our parents are, but we do get to choose the attitude that we bring to work. Why do you think that 2 out of 3 employees are not engaged? Do you really believe that they don't care about their work? Or is it that people at work don't care about them? You might think that designing culture sounds like a really great idea, but how do we do it? I'm going to share with you a little secret. There's 3 B's that we have to have in order to design a culture. The first one is we need to focus on building our people. The second one is that we need to look and bridge the gaps. We all have them. We've got to find them and bridge them. And the third thing is that we have to figure out what our culture brand is. I want to talk about building people. I have 4 kids, and when they were little, one of their favorite things to do was a craft activity called Shrinky Dinks. Raise of hand. Anybody do Shrinky Dinks? So Shrinky Dinks are these things, you color them, you make them any way you want them, and you put them in the oven, and magically they shrink down to the size of a charm or a jewelry, and it's just incredible. And then they had this other activity they liked that we buy at the dollar store called the grow animals. Did you ever have those? And you put them in water, you put them in the water, and you leave them there for a few days, and they grow and they grow and they grow. Every interaction that we have with someone, especially our employees, we have that opportunity. Are we the kind of leader that makes them shrinky-dink, that makes their confidence smaller because they were around us? Or are we the kind of leader that helps them to grow, and after they've spent time with us, they've grown and their confidence is larger and stronger and they feel better because we are builders of people? There's 3 things I want to share with you. The first one is we have to care about our people. When I was working as an engineer, I had my first baby. Beautiful baby, brown eyes, brown hair. We named her Megan.
So just key steps we can take.
Okay. When we think about growing people, there's 3 key steps that we can take. When I worked as a design engineer, I had my first baby. Her name was Megan, brown hair, brown eyes, brown hair, beautiful baby. She was only 6 weeks old and she got sick. We took her to the doctor and the doctor said, she's really sick, go straight to the hospital. They checked her in and told us that she had the RSV virus. This is very scary, especially for a 6-week-old infant. They laid her down in the crib, they strapped her down, they put tubes up her nose, tubes in her mouth, and we spent the night with her. They said there was a chance that she might not even make it through the night. She made it through the night and was stable the next morning. Well, I called my boss to tell him the situation, and I didn't know when I'd be coming back to work. He listened to me, and then he said, well, I hope you know that you can't use sick leave because it's not you that's sick. You're going to have to use your vacation time when you fill out your timesheet. Okay, back then I still had a cord on the phone. I remember holding up the phone with the cord dangling and thinking, did he really just say that to me? My baby might die and he's worried about how I fill out my timesheet? Please don't be that kind of leader. Be the kind of leader that cares about your people, that cares about your family. The second thing is that we need to learn to ask better questions. We connect through questions. Get in the habit of asking questions. Ask about people's family, ask about their hobbies, but also ask, what kind of work do you really like to do? What kind of things are frustrating you right now? If I could do something to make life better for you at work, what would that be? We connect and we show that we care and we build people through questions. When I started my business, I hired a business coach to help me. I had a degree in engineering. I knew nothing about business, setting up my first business plan. He taught me a lot of things, but the thing that he taught me that stayed with me the longest is he said, Sydney, you need to learn to be 100% present. How often really are we 100% present? Remember, this is 20 years ago. I didn't have an iPod, an iPad, a cell phone. I didn't even have a laptop computer. I had this big clunky thing that sat on top of my desk. But yet he was teaching me I needed to learn to be 100% present. Being present is an actual gift that we can give to our people, and that's how we build their confidence. By being present with them, by connecting through questions, and by truly caring about them, you can be the kind of leader that grows them and is not the shrinky-dink. My daughter survived and thrived and is healthy today, but my job did not. Does that work?